Welcome to the Village of Lake Bluff Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting on March 19th, 2025. Ms. Gable, can I have a call to order and get going here?
Yep, we'll call to order the Village of Lake Bluff's Joint Plan Commission Zoning Board of Appeals regular meeting for Wednesday, March 19th, and we'll start with a roll call vote. Member Danley?
Here.
Member Fisher? Here. Member Miller?
Here.
Member Russell?
Here.
Member Sorensen?
Here.
Member Toll is absent. Chair Peters?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
All right. Agenda item number 2, we always allocate 15 minutes for the public to address any issue that is not on the agenda, limiting the discussion to probably 3 minutes per question or per issue. Anyone from the public willing to approach? Anyone internet-based, Clara?
If anyone on the Zoom meeting would like to speak, can you please raise your hand? There's only one member of the public, and it doesn't look like they are looking to speak at this point.
All right. Agenda item number 3, consideration of the February 19, 2025 meeting minutes. I trust that the commission has all had a chance to review any proposed revisions or other modifications.
We did receive one minor edit from member Sorensen, just a rewording of a sentence that will amend.
All right.
And I had a couple on page 5, 5th paragraph down. Change the word "are" to "area," notion of this area. On page 6, it says that both member Russell and member Sorensen noted that this would be a lovely, open, undeveloped space if possible for the 800 Green Bay Road parcel. And I certainly did not indicate that I thought the whole parcel should be undeveloped space. I'm not sure if you did, but I didn't concur in that. The westerly portion of it, possibly, but not the whole area.
Okay.
And then PC, on page 11, PC's at the end of the meeting, we talked about both the no parking spaces along Sheridan Road and no public restrooms built along the bike paths. And the sentence only says that we agreed to the no parking spaces, but I believe there was consensus that we weren't interested in recommending public restrooms along the bike path.
Okay.
Those 3. That's it.
Okay.
I just had one minor change. I think it was on page 3, maybe the 4th paragraph. 5th paragraph, line 2, there was a boxed wood shift, and we should delete the wood.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other proposed revisions or other modifications? Hearing none, is there a motion, please?
A motion to approve the minutes as revised.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Agenda item number 4, Ms. Gable, if you want to present that, please.
Yep. In April of 2023, the village engaged Tesca and Associates, Inc. as a planning consultant to update the village's existing 1997 comprehensive plan with a new document to guide future village development and land use decisions for the next 20 years. The new plan provides an overarching framework and prioritizes elements from the numerous sub-area and topical plans created by the village. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is for the variations for 1800 Shore Acres Drive, and this is a public hearing that the applicant has requested to be continued.
All right. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Question on that, is there a time frame that they can continue to postpone their meetings, their application?
You can check the code, but as long as the
the commission continues to approve the motion to continue, I mean, yeah, but we can check the code to see if there's a certain amount of time an application would be on file, but I mean, nothing's been approved, so I think it's at the commission's discretion to continue to allow it, if the applicant is requesting it.
I have no problems. I was just curious if there's a time frame on.
Yeah, because we're in an open hearing, it would, if we close it, if we don't allow them to continue, we'll have to re-motion to do the public hearing, because we're technically in an open hearing since we started that the last time, so just.
Yeah, and as far as I know, the applicant, it should hopefully be here at the next meeting to present, so.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, could we have a vote, please?
Yeah, roll call, yeah. Member Danley?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Member Sorensen?
Aye.
And Chair Peters?
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
All right, agenda item number 5 now.
Okay, and on to that one. We have Tesca and Associates here to present. Just for some background, we engaged Tesca and Associates in April of 2023. We also hired another group, Opticos Design, to complete a missing middle housing study that will be included as an addendum to this updated comprehensive land use plan. Following nearly 2 years of engagement by the community, the PCZBA, and staff, Tesca has drafted the updated comprehensive land use plan, and Tesca will present a summary of the revised plan, and public feedback will be encouraged. The draft plan has also been posted to the village's website and the comprehensive plan website. The public hearing will be open at tonight's PCZBA meeting and may be continued as necessary to allow for adequate public comment and any necessary changes. And as a reminder, the PCZBA is a recommending body on this matter.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gable. Mr. Blue, or?
Hello again.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the PCZBA. It's a pleasure for Andrew and I to be with you again to present a summary of the plan at the public hearing. Since it's a public hearing, what we thought we'd do is present a summary of the overall document, not try and go into gory detail, but the idea here tonight is primarily to hear comment from the community and to hear your thoughts on that to the extent that there are changes in terms of policy or wording or whatnot. That's absolutely part of what we're here tonight, but this is primarily to hear from the community, but appropriate to start with a brief summary of the plan, which Andrew and I will dive into. So before we start, a few things to just mention. First is to thank you as the chair and
Mr. Blue, if I might interrupt, just procedurally,
you're going to go ahead and open a public hearing, aren't you?
I think we opened it.
Okay.
But I think the approach we'll take is if anyone from the public wishes to present tonight, I'd like to swear you in now.
Oh, okay.
Or just speak at the matter, not even just present, but if anyone wants to speak on the item in general. Okay.
Okay.
So we do have a few people.
Mr.
Yeah,
Blue is
include,
on.
yeah, and we'll swear you
Why
in
don't we
too, just
swear you
all
in,
at once.
Mr. Blue and your colleague, and then gentlemen, if you could all stand up, raise your right hand, and we'll swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated, or except for Mr. Blue. All right, sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Thank you for that. So just a couple of introductory words for those that are here and for those that may be listening at home to talk a little bit about the plan. First is thank you to all of you for your good work on this effort. It's in the document, and I'm sure you've seen that as you read it, and your contributions have really made it a community plan, and so thank you for that. Thank you, too, for the community, to all the folks who came, who participated online, who we met at the open houses and that we met at the pop-ups. Their ideas were very helpful in driving us through this. Thanks, to staff, to Clara and Lauren, and to what's his name? Drew, for all of their great effort and time in reviewing the document. It really reflects that. Thanks to our partners at Hay and Associates. Dave Kraft was part of the team here and helped an awful lot. So These things take a while, but they take a while because they're iterative, and they share everybody's insights. So I want to thank you all very much for the chance to participate with you on this. Last but not least, I want to thank Andrew. As you know, he took on the unenviable task of doing the first draft, which is the greatest challenge in what we do. So I want to acknowledge and thank him for that. So with that, let's dive into a little bit of a summary of the plan. We'll go to the next slide. This is the table of contents of the plan. As you all know, there's no definitive absolute of what goes into a comprehensive plan. The idea of the plan is that it reflects the community. And so the table of contents is generally along these lines, but it's always reflective of what's needed for the plan and the community. And the emphasis here is about the sub-areas, as you all know from going through this. Again, for those that are listening, just a note that a plan is a policy document. The plan and the village's adoption of the plan does not change anybody's zoning. It doesn't change anybody's ownership. It's a statement of policy of the village. As we've said a few times here, it's the answer to the question, what does the village want to see here? If a property owner or potential developer comes and says, what's the village's intent for this area? Well, the maps and the text of the document will show that, and that's really how it operates. The other thing that's important to keep in mind about a plan is how it's implemented. Right? Plans don't sit on shelves, they get used. They get used typically by communities when they prepare budgets and work plans, because there are a lot of ideas and things to be done in here that are listed. They're not all ripe, so it's good to look at them periodically. So these regular reviews is a way to implement the plan. The other is when you have development proposals. And so the development proposals, part of what should be considered is the extent to which it's supported by your comprehensive plan. So that's part of how a plan gets implemented. And then last but not least, a lot of communities have the opportunity to use their plans to secure grant funding. And so that's something that's also very important in terms of stating who and who we are and what we're looking to do. The next page has got a little bit of background on where we've been. And again, we're at the 18th month level and moving on. You see where we are here is the public hearing. And the idea of this slide is just to list, again, for the community, a lot of things that we've covered in terms of starting with data collection. There's a quantitative aspect to the plan making, and then there's the community input, both in person and online. And that's kind of the qualitative aspect of it. And these two things really do come together in terms of the document. And then once that has come together, we begin to develop policies and recommendations in concert with you all and working with staff. So that's how we got to where we are. I'm going to turn us over to Andrew to walk us through the summary of the various sub-areas and chapters of the plan. And then we're looking forward to hearing from the community and having further discussion with you all. Thanks.
All right, so a few things on this plan have changed since the last time we saw you. This is just a slide documenting some of the changes. Some of them are wording changes. Some of them are generalizing language, specifically with the sub-areas of the village-owned 10 acres and Stonebridge. We definitely want to allow that development enough when development occurs to be adequately assessed by this body. So we did not want to make a recommendation one way or the other, just to say that scale and certain things like that are very important factors. Furthermore, some things that were mentioned earlier, parking along Sheridan, street parking, and public restrooms, those have been omitted. And generally, the things that were reached consensus here have been changed. Next slide, please. And I'm not exactly sure if we've shown you the slide yet, but this is significant engagement and feedback from the community. The website has 4,500 visits. That's very high for a community that has less than 6,000 people. People use the comment map very often, and while not all the ideas on the comment map were things that are covered in the scope of the plan, we made sure that staff heard these issues, heard these complaints, ideas, and can address them separately. Next slide, please. land use. A lot of these are just best practice, right? Continuing to review and update the codes, making sure you regulate different land uses as they occur. For example, 20 years ago, no one knew what a co-working space was. Now you probably want to have that in your code. Exploring different types of development, particularly at the key interchange of Route 176 and Route 41, and generally preserving land use across the community. That is a big part of what makes Lake Bluff, and all the land use changes are really shown within the sub areas, which we'll be getting to on the next slide. Yes, okay, I forgot that there was this map here, but as you can see, generally all the land uses are pretty much the same. But the big opportunities for new development are the interchange of 41 and 176, potential housing diversity on the 800 Green Bay property, village-owned 10 acres, Stonebridge, and some development opportunities in the downtown CBD area. Western Lake Bluff, as you know, in the plan, these are 3 different sub-areas. For the sake of brevity, we decided to just put it all in one. But the primary recommendations are work with IDOT as improvements occur to also set forth improvements to the urban environment. That includes sidewalks, that includes potential trails sparingly, that includes green space, that includes buffering, and that includes stormwater solutions and just generally upgrading that area. Next slide. And you've seen this graphic before. This is a potential vision of what this area can be. It shows development and redevelopment near the interchange, redevelopment along Route 176, and 2 potential properties that could be used as mixed-use housing or housing that are located near commercial areas to ensure that people are situated close to it, not sandwiched between 2 warehouses, but part of more of a contiguous community. Next slide. Central Business District, utilize Block 3, and this is already in progress as we're talking, to kind of create this transition between the CBD and the residential neighborhoods, stepping down density. Block 2 is an opportunity for mixed-use development, and continuing to incentivize that or explore it, allow it, can really kind of tie the downtown together. And of course, being flexible in how development occurs, exploring ways of maybe shared parking and other things that can allow these developments to occur successfully. Next slide. And here's just a concept design. The 2 Block 3 properties on the far right are designs that have already been presented, so we decided to include those in the plan. All the historic properties are maintained, and just potential development sites include Block 3, the 2 village-owned properties at Walnut and North, and another property at, I think that's Evanston and North. Oak and North. Next slide, please. 800 Green Bay Road. This currently a manor house. Our thought is, from discussion, is to kind of keep the overall density at a level that's sensible and comparable to its neighbors. How that is achieved is we encourage creativity. So perhaps the developer will include maybe include townhomes to preserve a bunch of green space. Perhaps the developer can put clustered housing to preserve green space. Basically being open to different approaches and maintaining that essential green space in the back and maintaining the architecturally significant manor house, and exploring other opportunities to preserve and reuse things on the property. Next slide. Stonebridge, same deal pretty much. Maintaining a sort of density that is comparable to its neighborhood to the north, not just plopping a bunch of dense buildings there. But if a developer wants to be creative, the village should be open to that. Maybe a developer wants to again, cluster houses or put a couple townhomes in or things like that. Using that will preserve more green space, and we also removed the reference to kind of through traffic and put that license back to PCZBA. We're not going one way or the other on it. But yeah, other things include engaging Witchwood Lane with housing to face the other housing. Perhaps that's a green, perhaps that's a boulevard. Again, encouraging flexibility and creativity. And then the last of the sub areas are the village-owned 10 acres. The village has, since they own this property, the village has significant leverage in the type of development. And again, exploring missing middle housing and being open to the idea of if this is developed at a low density, then perhaps that can connect to the neighborhood via vehicular connections. But if it's something that's a bit higher density, perhaps just trails, perhaps people. But again, that is, to be determined by a potential developer and traffic studies and things like that, and then signed off on by this body and the village board. Next slide. Environment and open space. There were a ton of recommendations here because it's such a foundational part of the village. But basically, best practices, electrification, supporting the park district and other partners, like Bluff Open Lands, supporting entities that preserve and enhance open space, tree planting, rain gardens, more of the natural landscape, to preserve and to create when possible, to help mitigate events of flooding and the urban heat island effect. And the village also has a lot of plans, including the stormwater plan and sustainability plans. So continue to do that, recognizing the good work that the village has done so far. Housing, you'll see in the revised plan document, we've changed a bit of the heritage lots. But there are still certain lots that are non-conforming that can remain buildable per our recommendations. But we've made it more clear so as houses that are built on multiple of these non-conforming heritage lots can't be just split up into, let's say, 4 different houses. Other things generally are clustered development, as you saw in some of the sub areas, improving the aesthetics and quality of some of the multifamily housing, and utilizing these opportunities in the forms of sub areas to kind of create this diverse housing stock while not overwhelming the village's single family character. Community character and design, we have lots of recommendations in the CBD. Continue to do what the village is doing, which is reducing clutter, reducing signage, so that people get these natural view corridors and these natural plantings, and continuing the village's efforts towards historic preservation. And transportation, a lot of it revolves around Route 176, especially grade separating that crossing, continue to work with IDOT, continuing to expand the trail network, adding improved trail connections, traffic calming on streets that are straight and might have issues with speeding, and prioritizing new sidewalks. There have been previous studies about where to put sidewalks, continuing to push for funding for that and get sidewalks built in these high priority areas. And then next slide, economic development. So the village, economic development, highly reliant on some of the automobile dealerships and the retail on the western edge of the village. Continuing to diversify that, continuing to assess the incentive programs, drawing people into the village for what makes the village kind of unique. So that could be trail users, that could be drawing people in for the farmers markets, Bluffinia, and finding municipal properties that might support a commercial use. Perhaps that's something in the train station, perhaps through Lake Bluff Park District, that's something in Blair Park. But those are ways, small ways, but ways to also generate revenue and create place. And then, yeah, the last slide. So we'll be considering public feedback both here, online, feedback from the PCZBA. We will seek a recommendation, whether tonight or at a continuation of this meeting, and then we will present to the village board with your blessing for adoption.
Thank you, Andrew. Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Any discussion among the commissioners right now, or we'll wait for a little public comment and go from there?
Sounds good.
You
Wait
good?
for public comment.
Okay. Anyone from the public that wishes to address the commission?
I don't know if anybody stood up behind me, so.
Yeah, if you could state your name for the record and your
Yeah.
address, please.
Peter White, 400 East Sheridan Place. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the hard work that you've all dedicated to this. Just a few comments for your consideration this evening. I read I didn't read it completely. I went through the 120-page PowerPoint. I'll do it more diligently here in the future. But I noted 24 mentions of citations of affordable housing and 24 citations or mentions of missing middle housing or middle housing. In all the instances, those two phrases are being used synonymously. I'm a little at a loss because even the document that this committee's worked on is called Affordable Housing Plan. My question is, why do we use missing housing when it's not a legally prescribed term, whereas affordable housing is legally prescribed as being 60% of the median income based on 30% of a household's income? Can we please just use affordable housing consistently and get rid of the missing middle income, or missing middle housing, or middle housing terminology? I think that would go a long way. And it would be consistent legally with the statutes and the laws of Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. White. I may defer to Courtney on that, or may defer to Michael. If you could comment, Michael, that'd be great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry if I cut you off, Mr. White.
No, don't worry.
Okay,
I got a couple more points.
we have time.
Great points, and to some extent, missing middle and affordable are used interchangeably. And we've had this talk a few times with the PCZBA as part of the process. The plan does not talk so much about affordable housing. The idea is to talk in the legal sense that you mentioned.
That's why we're doing it, though,
That's part,
to comply with Illinois statute.
Can I try to answer that? If that's all right?
thank you.
Yeah, can you bring up the missing middle housing continuum exhibit that we've shown in different locations?
Yep.
So the village has adopted, going back to, I think, 2005, an affordable housing plan. That's been a policy document the village has adopted to be responsive to the Affordable Housing Act.
Right.
The village has been having conversations, certainly part of this comprehensive land use plan update. The village, in addition to Tesca, hired Opticos, a architecture firm that specializes in missing middle housing. And that topic, as the village has discussed it, hasn't been about affordable housing, it's about diversified housing product types. That in the missing middle housing, you'll see, basically there's detached single-family housing, which the village is predominantly made up of, and that over 95% of the housing stock is that. Then there's a lot of different housing, like attached duplexes, or a triplex, or a courtyard apartments like we have in the central business district and adjacent in the R5 area. That's the product housing type that the village is looking to create. And this comprehensive land use plan, as this group has discussed it so far, has been talking about adding that type of product type in the CBD and the R5, and potentially in some of those greenfield developments like the Stone Bridge or that other site just north of elementary school. And so you see along this continuum of mid-rise to detached single family, there's a lot of housing product types that I just mentioned that are not necessarily facilitated by the village's codes. And that's very true in a lot of communities, but that's what we talk about. And I think throughout the conversation, and there was 2 specific meetings where we talked about missing middle housing, that we said affordable housing is commonly talked about with missing middle, but in Lake Bluff, that is highly unlikely given the underlying land cost, unless it would take a village probably subsidizing a project to make that happen. And that's not what's being talked about. So it's really, the conversation about missing middle housing is diversification of product type.
And yet the document says affordable, so we're conflating 2 issues here. Can we get something that explains to the public exactly what the difference is and what the commission's trying to do?
So the village does have an affordable housing plan as well, and that is something that Drew had mentioned that was initially passed in 2005 and's been updated since then. And so I think most of the mentions in the plan are mentions of that plan existing.
Well, I'll go back and read the document, but affordable is referencing an economic criteria, not a type of residence.
Correct.
So again, I believe we're conflating the 2. Okay, I wasn't a math major, but you might want to go back and look at this part of the plan, Article 3B. I think the page 11. Very quickly, they said you need to add 123 affordable residences to meet the 10%. I don't think that's true, because if you add the 123, you change the total number, and if you keep the non-affordable number the same, it changes the percentage. Trust me.
What page did you say this was on, Mr. White?
11.
I think it's 13,
It's 13.
I think. Oh, page 13?
Yeah, you got 1,916 single-family or
Page 13.
non-affordable residents.
It's not listed on there.
You want to get to 199, you need to build 123, but that only gives you a 9.4% of the total versus your 10% target. Let's not go into the math. Let the accountants go over it tomorrow.
Okay.
But I think the number is 15, you have 15 less than you really need. You need 15 more to get to the 10%. That's the bottom line. It doesn't make a big difference.
Yeah, staff will work through the math with Mr. Blue's team, but thank you.
Yep. And now going back to affordable, as defined by Illinois statute, which is 60% of the median area household income. I pulled off a number of 174,000 for Lake Bluff. It might be a couple years old, I don't know, things are going up, inflation's up. So if, instead of looking at that 60%, let's look at 50% of the median income, just to keep the math straightforward. That would be 87,000 approximately. Illinois statute says 30% of the total income should go to housing to make it affordable. That'd be 26,000. If you just do a present value calculation, not taking into consideration a down payment for a house with a term of 30 years, an interest rate of 6.5%, and a monthly payment, as I mentioned, of $2183. That gives you a present value of $345,000. So you can say safely, and again, this was back of the envelope, I did it in an hour this afternoon, but you're looking at a property to be affordable for somebody in this community of between $300,000 and $400,000. You build 138 of those, according to my math, at approximately, this is kind of a spitball number, $7,000 in property tax, you get roughly $1 million in revenue for the village. So where am I going? Oh, and one other thing is if you build those 138 new dwellings, assume one child per household, which is not unreasonable. I don't know, depending on the mixture. That's 138 new students in the school district, or a 16% increase over the 850 students that are in District 65 today. So where am I going with all this? One is that you're looking at houses on the affordable side, again, not structurally, but on the affordable side, of between $300,000 and $400,000. Question is, is that the kind of residents we want in our community? But further, I've looked at the documents, but I've never seen a holistic economic model for these projects or for what we want to do as a village, meaning what's the income, what's the property tax revenue going to be balanced against the cost to the school district? Because the school district, if you add 16% more students to their schools, they're going to come and ask for 16%. They're not going to get it, but there's going to be a higher cost in the schools. So what's the overall tax burden to the Lake Bluff residents? And with that, I'll conclude. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Appreciate it.
What's your profession?
Dr. Elliott, we met in your office once. I'm in the medical device business.
I remember you now.
Yeah, so I would ask that the committee, as we go through this, really model some of this out. You can get a general idea from reading the documents, but let's see the math and why this works for Lake Bluff.
No, thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
That's true, I do remember him.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Anything on the web, Clara?
If anyone would like to speak that's on the Zoom call, if you can hit the button to raise your hand to speak, we can allow you to speak. Oh. Hold on one second. We do have somebody on the call that wants to speak.
We should swear them in.
Yeah. Okay, so I sent a message to promote you to a panelist so that you can speak, Mark. Okay, hold on one second.
Of course.
Okay, Mark, can you hear us?
I can. Good evening.
Great.
Hey, Mark, before we get started, we'll have to swear you in.
No worries.
Okay. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Appreciate it. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Peters and members of the PCZBA. And I'll keep this very brief. Page 59 of the comp plan relating to the CBD says that there is a general community preference for 3 stories. I think that's probably an overstatement given all that we've been through here collectively as a village in the last 10 years. And I'd sent a brief email about this before, but I think particularly, consistent with the remarks that Member Russell made at the February 19th meeting, and also consistent with the emailed remarks that Mickey Collins submitted today, shortly before the meeting today. I think that statement needs a little more nuance and some revision. I don't think that anyone's looking for 3 stories facing North Avenue if there's ever to be redevelopment on Block 2. The PCZBA might want to take a look at that language there and suggest some revisions, as TSCA may not be fully aware of all that we've been through as a community on that issue. Thanks so much, and thanks for your hard work on this. There's a lot of moving parts in this plan, and you've done a lot of great work on this, so thank you so much.
No, thank you, Mark, and let the record reflect that your email to the village dated March 19th, 2025 will be incorporated into the record.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Okay, would anyone else on the Zoom call like to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Doesn't look like it.
And I think for the record, we should also incorporate the email that Mickey Collins submitted also on March 19th, 2025. How do we go from there?
Did we get that one? That was just today. That came in later.
All right. Why don't we open up for discussion among the commissioners?
It's in there.
Was it
I
on
don't
the
know if
table?
we go section by section or how we should proceed.
Maybe we should proceed as the follow-up to the presentations from the public first.
Yeah, we certainly could. I guess any further discussion with respect to the issues or concerns that Mr. White has raised? Is there a mechanism by which we can flesh that out a little better in the document?
We'll go back and take a look at it and talk with staff.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blue. And then the issue or question or concern that Mr. Stoltenberg raised, we could probably discuss that right away and then get off onto some other tangents. So maybe we should refer to page 59 of the draft.
It's an easy fix if we decide that we don't want to go through the no 3-on-3 ever again. Maybe we shouldn't put a definitive 3 stories in there and just leave it either 2 stories or just leave it blank and have it brought up if the problem or suggestion comes up in the future. Just leave it redevelopment of the area and don't make it no maximum building or maximum of 2 stories.
And the document is a little bit jumpy in that paragraph. You start out by talking about the PNC block, and then you make this general statement about the neighborhood preference for a maximum of 3 stories. And I think that the wording just needs to be changed based upon our comments of a month ago, that, we would consider a maximum of, or recommend a maximum of 3 stories on the north side of Scranton in Block 2, but that the south side of North, clearly that the neighborhood has expressed many times over the years that that their preference isn't for a maximum 3 stories. That's just doesn't get at it. But it's an easy fix. It's an easy wording fix.
Well, I think even an exhibit could show it clearly, show the block and say, write the number, right? Make it crystal clear, because I would say rather have definitive direction than not for the development community for guidance, because they're going to ask, right? And so
So are we going to keep upwards of 3 stories?
whatever number it is, but just have a number.
Keep what?
I mean, do we want to keep it, I don't think we
Up
should
to?
keep it up to 3, because you know there's going to be negative feedback. Prefer, you can say preferred 2 stories, or just, if we have to have a definitive statement, I think 3 stories which should not be in there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we have to be careful with anything. This 20 years from now, or whatever we're looking at, this comprehensive plan, I think we should, like the other one's 2.5. If we say no more than 2, does that mean 2.5's not agreed? And if there's a rooftop availability or opportunity.
Or should we just leave it as what code allows? We're mincing words, for down the road. This is just aspirational. This isn't written in stone.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with saying considering allowing up to 3 stories on the north side of Scranton for Block 2, and then no more than 2.5 stories for the south side of North Avenue in Block 2.
Yeah, I think that would allow for the tapering effect, or however
And
you
we've got
define it.
everything covered. I mean, we've got a building that's already approved, and I'm assuming it's moving forward. The PNC Bank lot is still moving forward, correct?
Correct.
That, what is a technically 3-story building, the 3rd story setback, but it's definitely 3 stories. And then that leaves the other lot at the corner of Scranton and Evanston, which we've seen a 2.5-story plan, and leaving that at 2.5 stories also. It seems to me that's been the general consensus in the review of all these lots.
The zoning for Block 2 is, what's the height for the zoning?
2.
2 stories. So they have to come before us to, whoever's here in the future. So again, it's words. It doesn't mean anything. It's aspirational. Because they can come here and we can say, well, it's zoned for 2 stories and that's what you have to do, or we make allowance for 2.5 stories.
One thing to note with that, if something were to come along, something that you could note for approval would be consistency with the comp plan. So you're right in that this is aspirational, but there are effects that it has on petitions potentially.
So the consensus is to leave it as is?
As written in the plan now? But absolutely not, because that's a,
No.
Okay.
because the statement is just wrong as it's written. And it needs to be softened.
I mean, possibly up to, but not exceeding 2.5 stories, is that? Or is
That would
that
be,
too bold?
that would be fine
Just
also.
up to 2.5 stories seems to be where we are right now, right?
I think the language that kind of gets to this, that we've talked about in other cases, is that it be respectful of the residences on the north side, right? And we've talked about that in terms of some of the sub-areas. I think that's appropriate here too, so that 3 on Scranton may be appropriate, but that to step back and to be 2 or perhaps 2.5 on the north side, on the north side of the block, is something that the village would consider depending on a case-by-case review of an application that came before the community, or words to that effect.
Right.
Is that's like kind of the consensus we've been hearing here, so that's,
Yes,
okay.
craft something
Agree.
in that language that you just presented.
What you said.
Yes.
Now I have to remember it, but that's fine.
Yes, you do.
Claire's got to take it.
Yeah, we've got it recorded.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great, thank you.
No, thank you.
Can I ask just a follow-up question related to that?
Oh, certainly.
So this is the 2.5-ish 3 is what I heard, 2 to 2.5 here. This is 3. This is 3. Any thoughts on this little space, just out of curiosity? Should this be 2, 2.5 as well? Match that?
Uh-oh.
There's no residential there, right?
Well, the condos, yeah.
Okay.
The village owns this piece.
Right,
The village, that was part of the missing middle housing study. This is 3 stories already.
right.
This is 3 stories as of right, unless you were using the PMD tool, then it goes down right now, right? Maybe that gets re-examined when the village looks back at its R5 regs, but right now it's odd, where the tool designed to allow more creative design is limited in this regard. But this is a, kind of an underutilized piece of land. Could something happen here? Maybe. These condos are fairly, well-maintained, but they've been around a while. And this has been a surface lot. Before that, it was a detached single-family home
Isn't that a 3-story building in front of the condos?
right here.
No, I'm talking about where the bank is.
Where the bank here?
Oh, it's over there. Okay.
Yeah, this is the bank.
Okay.
I think we should say something for all those units along the south side of North Avenue, with the exception of the building at the corner of Sheridan. I think we should say that we could consider up to a maximum of 2.5 stories, depending upon,
From here over,
design.
from here this way is the 3. Okay.
That's my opinion. I can't speak for everyone else. But
I would disagree. I, not just disagree, but I think 2.5 to 3, and anytime we put something in and bring it down to a level where it's difficult for any developer to foreseeable, have a positive financial outcome, it just, and we're trying to work on missing middle and more housing and more affordable, and we're just limiting not only for some neighbors, and also we're depending on how it's built. Maybe we need to control, and that's maybe the Architectural Review Board, but how we, the materials and what we use and the setbacks can really be modified far more than just limiting a height. It's also the integrity and quality and the beautification that can happen with new development. And I just don't want us to limit potential builders of any sort when they start doing the numbers and it just doesn't make sense, and we're talking about a half a floor. So and there's already 3 stories on the other area, and it just seems that we have 3 already in the village on the other end of where the bank is, so I think that would be consistent.
I just think there's been a clear message for about 10 years that the residents along North Avenue don't want 3 stories on the south side of North. I think it's been almost unanimous, if not unanimous. So I can't vote for any language that says, I won't vote, I can be outvoted 6-1, but I'm not going to vote for a statement that says we're going to allow up to 3 stories on the south side of North, just based upon what we've heard from all the residents on the north side of North.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything, if we use the language that you were saying about appropriate,
Scale.
appropriate scale, in case maybe something is well presented that's next to the 3-story, or, or adjacent, or, I do respect the fact that this is a 20-year plan, and in 20 years, maybe some of the other properties along North Avenue are going to come up with creative 2.5 plus, a little bit higher, or 3. I don't know. Are we handcuffing ourselves to go through another battle of a different battle,
Well,
sort of.
Nothing is definitive in the plan anyway. It's a guiding document, and if the right project
Right.
comes in that everyone thinks this is great, it's got the right setback on the third
Right.
floor.
So that's why
a
I'm
massive
saying maybe
setback,
we
then
don't
it
want
could
the
be,
number.
but I agree with Mr. Stolzenberg's that the comment that's in here about this maximum of 3-story, it's just
Right, I
not the
agree.
sentiment that's been
I agree.
expressed, and we shouldn't say it, so we
Right.
shouldn't say it.
Right. I agree with that, but I mean, I'm just thinking that maybe a little bit of nebulous there by saying appropriate to the neighbors doesn't necessarily create more problems down the line, because I'd hate to have a developer say, oh, they're telling me I can't do more than 2.5 stories, but I've got that marvelous plan that meets the setbacks and the side backs and everything, and it would work, but I won't come because it's a waste of time. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
I agree. I think the context matters. I fully appreciate 2.5 stories until we realize this is maybe a 20-year document and we can't predict the future. So if we can leave some room for considering something that maybe is an excellent design that does a great job with sight lines, and it doesn't feel like a hulking 3 stories, it's possible.
Yeah, the word choice is going to be so critical, and I guess without whiteboarding it or something like that, it's hard to come up with a well-drafted paragraph right now, but
I only stood up because I had the same thought you did, that you shared. To pick a number is to pick a number, and it's to kind of have the effect that you talked about, which says, we said 2, I'm not even going to talk about 3. To take the numbers out and to speak to the importance of being sensitive to the neighborhood to the north is to invite people to come to you with 3 and to try and make the case for why they're being sensitive to the area to the north, which is probably what they're going to do anyway. So again, this is not a regulatory document. This is an advisory document. This is the document that perhaps encourages or maybe discourages the development world from coming to you. You can't put in only 2 and then just welcome 3, or you can't put in 3 and then limit people to 2. That's a little bit of bait and switch. But you're talking about kind of more nebulous language. Maybe not so much about nebulous language, but one of the options that I guess I would offer is the idea about context and case-by-case consideration and being very specific about the neighbors to the north, and that the village would consider designs, without saying a number, would consider designs, but would require or would look for them to be consider the areas to the north, the residents to the north. So I guess that's kind of your choice at this point. And this is a policy decision. There's not a yes or no or a right answer here that frankly we can share with you. But I guess the options that I would summarize is to include a number is to say that number, 2, 2.5, whatever it is. To talk about being open to consideration on a case-by-case basis invites just that. So I'm not trying to make the choice. I'm just trying to clarify it and look for your direction on how you'd like the plan to read.
Vague.
Vague? Okay, so that would be the first option about talking about the village is open to designs that are respectful of the neighbors to the north and don't adversely impact them in terms of height, bulk, and so on.
Yes. Context specific.
Okay.
Mr.
That's the
Russell,
direction, we can certainly do that.
comfortable?
Well, I would be more comfortable if when you craft this language, there's with the acknowledgement, that it includes a statement, something to the effect, with the acknowledgement that the neighbors to the north have opposed 3-story development in the
It's-
past, so that it gets some sort of message across.
It's not for us to write, it's for you to tell us what you
know,
want to
write
share.
it. You write it, and we say whether we like it or not. We're not writing, we didn't write any of this, we wrote it all, with our guidance, so.
I would just change to with consideration to the neighbors of the north, to the north. And just leave it like that.
Okay.
I wouldn't get any more specific then.
We do have a hand raised from Mark Stolzenberg.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Stolzenberg.
Yeah, I actually unraised my hand, but I'm sure that my neighbors on North Avenue, I will be letting them know about this discussion, and particularly Ms. Danley and Ms. Fisher's comments, because it's really disappointing to hear after all the turmoil that this village has gone through over the last decade, and now hear that we may be reconsidering, the views of the community on this issue, particularly, directly facing single-family homes in a block where we had pushed back pretty significantly, particularly when we were going through the downtown development guidelines and all that. So it kind of feels like this is wiping the slate clean of all that work. And I think many people in the community are going to be very disappointed with some of the comments that we've heard tonight. But again, we appreciate your work in trying to craft this plan. There's a lot of moving parts here, and we understand that, there are divergent views here in the community, but I will tell you the neighborhood's not going to be really happy about this conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. I suspect we're not going to get this resolved this evening. We'll have to come up with another draft or drafts, avoiding a reference, I think, to 3 stories. I don't think that's necessarily going to fly. And as we all know, the document's going to be relied upon by certain individuals at certain points in the future. But I think the consensus, but not the unanimity, is no reference greater than 2.5 stories, but I might be wrong on that. Any further discussion on that particular point?
Just to clarify, with that one, are you just talking about the area that is along Walnut and North there at the corner? Or are you talking about the other portions as well that we've discussed, like along Scranton for the 2.5?
We're talking,
That was Drew's question.
Is from here to there,
Okay.
on North.
on the south side of the north.
All right.
We'll have some alternative languages for next time.
Yeah, I just think it's it's a critical geographic area in the village. I think there's got to be a consensus, at least among the commissioners and eventually among the board, village board, as to what that language should be. But it will set a baseline, whatever that, if there is a number, that'll be the baseline.
So Drew, you feel there definitely should be a number there?
Working with the Business Advisory Committee and others, the development community, they want, they're trying to avoid risk. And the greater clarity the village can offer in both its long-term vision and its regulatory codes allow the greater reduction of risk for them when they pursue projects. So they're looking for alignment. So this and the zoning code need to align for the village's vision for the community so that they can know how the village wants to be developed. And this is the foundation. And then you get to the sharper point is the zoning, and you get to other design at the tip of the pyramid, but this is the foundation. So getting it, the vision, the clearer we can state the vision, the easier it is for the world to know where the village, how the village wants to grow up on these blocks.
Does anybody look at block 1 with the 3 stories, and when they talk about development?
On that north
No,
west corner?
not where the bank building is. Isn't that 3 stories?
That is 3 stories. It's recessed back. Most of it is recessed back by design to appear less bulky.
So we do have precedent for both 2.5 and 3 stories. But there's no housing. Well, they got you do have the condos back there.
They do. And actually, Block 1, when it was redeveloped, the village gave the developer the ability to make, they could have residential as of right. It just didn't plummet that way.
Right.
But they could have made it. It could have been mixed use, certainly. Still can be, if they want to make that investment.
Is a story defined in our code.
It is in the zoning, yes,
In the zoning.
Oh, it is?
yes.
Okay.
And so like, it'll say like, block 2 between Walnut and Oak Avenue on the north side of Scranton shall be no greater than 2 stories or 30 feet. I think that's the actual numbers in the code, but it spells it out both story-wise and feet.
So would 2 stories equate to a maximum of 30 feet?
It does in our code,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to take some wordsmithing to come up with something that is as direct as can be, but still protects the neighbors, protects the village, and gives guidance going forward. I just don't think we can do it right now, tonight.
Drew, can I ask, what is the height restriction on that, for the residential there? On that side?
On the south side of North? That's a good question. I think it's R4, I think. And so that's going to be,
It's based on lot width,
yeah,
but it's
probably
going to range from 32
34.
to, yeah, mostly 32 or 34.
Okay.
Because on the new PNC project, the upper limit is 32 feet or 34 feet?
35 is what the zoning relief they got granted.
35 at.
35
at the
peak.
apex.
For the peak of
From existing grade to the peak of that center box for the access to the roof.
Okay. All right.
I have another question. On the south side of North, with those one and 2 story,
Mostly 1 story.
1 story, is that zone, that's zoned R5?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if a multifamily unit wanted to go in there, what would be the height restriction on that?
On an R5?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, on a multifamily R5, I would consult the code. It's probably very similar to the R5 or R4 max,
Which is 30,
34.
34? So
Ballpark.
somebody theoretically can take that whole row of single-family homes and build a 2-story plus building there. And the people on the north side of North would be looking at well, hopefully it'll be pleasant to look at, but they'd be looking at a multi-story building, correct? And they wouldn't have any say in the matter.
I think that's generally true, that the as of right, and I will also say it's generally true that it's very difficult to build under the existing R5 regulations. But somebody could assemble those parcels and actually all of those, with the exception of the village-owned properties that are on the far west side of that block, are under single ownership.
So one person owns all those individual homes?
There's 1 single-family home, which is here, but this is multifamily.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this is, but, so the village owns these 2 lots, but all this and this is owned by the same owner.
Oh, yeah, okay, they knew that, okay. But that's not this purview, because that has nothing to do with the future plan, except that maybe as the middle housing that we talk about, maybe go there.
Always one of the primary impediments to redevelopment is multiple property owners, right? It's getting them all to agree on a vision for, or how a business deal worked out. That would not be the case in this matter.
Right, or maybe even easier
Yeah,
to.
right.
Okay. How would the commission like to proceed as far as working our way through the document? Do you have concerns regarding any specific language on any specific page?
Should we
or-
address the affordable housing, since that was brought up? Do we need to address that? Or is that just a statement of fact? Drew, why don't you just sit here?
I'm getting my steps in. No, I think I did have a brief conversation with Mr. White. I think a lot of the comments he was making was actually specifically within the affordable housing plan, or the village board adopted document. That's not part of this group, but we had a conversation. It is referenced in this document, but it's a different standalone policy document, so.
Different plan that's required per statute.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Okay.
Then take the word affordable out of the document and define what middle housing is.
Or make it separate sections.
It's extremely ambiguous.
We'll look at it and see the reference points, how it appears, affordable housing appears in the plan. I think it's referenced.
The affordable housing
The plan, it references the plan, but nothing more than that.
Beyond
When it
that.
references the affordable housing plan, that's where the word affordable gets used.
But I don't know if I'm trying to remember if we have defined missing middle housing at all in the plan.
So
No, it's not
we
in the
have-
appendix
We have
either.
the missing middle study that will be an appendix, will be attached to this plan. And that does define missing middle.
So this plan should reference that specifically, refer to the middle missing plan.
We'll clarify that next month about any kind of cross-references, what this is or what it isn't. And the appendices can be a choice of what you recommend be included in the plan. I mean, that could be, appendix doesn't necessarily have to be one, but.
How much would one of these missing affordable housing,
Don't say
housing
affordable.
dwelling cost?
Those are two separate pieces, right?
Not missing.
Don't say
It's
affordable in
missing middle and affordable. It's two separate things.
Yeah,
It
for
should be
example-
two separate things.
The missing middle housing conversation covers condo, the two and a short third story project here that's been approved by the village board, which they're selling units actively, is diversified housing product, and it falls on that continuum of missing middle housing. I mean, I think those units are for like 3 to 4 million per unit, and there's 8 units. I don't think that's affordable by anybody.
And they're
Right.
not, they haven't been
But that
classified
qualifies
as.
as missing middle under the village's conversation. Well, again, it's the appendices, it does reference that. And I would say, generally speaking, missing middle housing conversation internationally does have an affordable component to it. It does. But the village's conversation has said, we have a vision for diversifying housing product types to include those product types within the missing middle. Different. Which probably could be clearer.
Affordable and some of them could not.
That depends on the development. The village could
Developer.
approve an affordable housing project, but that's not cited here. The affordable housing plan covers that.
And my point, again, not to be labored, is when you read these documents, it's very hard to understand exactly what you're trying. Because of those two.
Yeah.
Because those two words are used virtually synonymous.
And we'll look at that and see if there's greater clarity we can offer.
And affordable has a state regulatory
It-
definition.
And it references that when it references that document within the draft plan.
Yes.
And maybe, since one of Mr. Waite's concerns is this legal definition of affordable housing, and if he's found use of the word affordable 24 times in our document, there may be instances where it is unclear as to whether that word affordable is referencing the legal requirements of affordable housing plan, and maybe there are opportunities to delete the word affordable and use other terms so that there is more clarity.
We will work on that for sure.
Yep.
Yep.
This is why it's a draft plan, because we're learning and taking in all this feedback and recognizing that maybe we didn't get all of the pieces into one draft initially, so we can do it.
Any specific pages or topics by any of the commissioners that you want to address? I've got a couple of my own, but want to just raise it generally or submit comments again to the village. And that'll get escalated to Mr. Bloom's team.
Well, I've got one issue that's giving me a cerebral hemorrhage.
Well, we don't want you to stroke out or have a
tonight,
hemorrhage
George.
tonight.
And then I've got, then I've had about 8 items where I really felt like we needed to have the Plan Commission's consensus on, that I think are still unclear, that we haven't
Okay.
really hashed through. And then I've got another 10 where it's just typos or still stuff missing on maps, which I can give
Yeah, that would be great.
directly to you, but the one issue, if you want me to start,
Yeah, why don't you start, Mr.
that really concerns me is the historic lot issue. The way it's written,
George, can you give us the page? Can you cite the
page 96,
Is it the heritage lot?
heritage, I'm sorry, heritage lots, not historic lots. The way it's written, in my opinion, knowing what I know about zoning and knowing what I know about the original lots and the way they were platted, you might as well just make a statement that the village is going to should consider evaluating tremendously increasing the density of the entire east side of the village, as well as Malman Avenue north of 176. Because the language in here, if taken literally, does just that. For example, the Simpson Avenue, the east side, or west side of Simpson Avenue between Ravine and Prospect. There are 2 houses at front on that block, and there are 2 houses where their side yards are on that block. And if you go back to the plats, there are 18 lots where there are currently 4 homes. It opens up a complete Pandora's box relative to what you're really suggesting, or what the plan should suggest we allow on the east side. And it makes no sense to me. Are we talking, first of all, what is the historic area that we are talking about? Are we talking about the original first subdivision of Lake Bluff? Are we talking about the first 10 subdivisions that occurred on the east side? I don't know. The block bordered by Gurney, Moffett, Prospect, and Ravine, where there currently are 8 homes, there are 22 historic lots platted there.
Oh.
That's a density increase of almost threefold. Is that the kind of recommendation we even want to say we should consider that increase in density? It's an end run around what Opticos. It's worse. It's a more significant density increase than what Opticos recommended for our R4 in their first draft. I don't. It's way too open-ended. And what's the difference? I mean, what's the intent? I didn't draft this. What's the intent? What is the intention? Because it can be interpreted in a number of different ways in these 2 simple paragraphs you have here.
You had a similar comment last time, and the goal was to more narrowly write this in a way to say that these smaller lots where these original cottages are being, by code, when they come under ownership of, adjoining property, the same property owner owns both, a lot that is contiguous to one of these smaller lots, that they get gobbled up, right? And they can no longer be developed so the idea is, should the village do something to change that moving forward, or for certain specific lots, and really the idea is to study that issue. The goal is to say, does the village care, and really should the village do something about it? And so this is written in a way that says, study zoning to allow for the preservation of heritage lots in historic portions of the village, because they're on the east side, right? That's where we're talking about.
Well, there's 2 distinct different issues.
Yeah.
Where there is an existing heritage lot with a smaller home on it.
Mm-hmm.
These 25-foot, or whatever we want to draw the minimum as. And that's one of my general questions, is what do you mean by heritage lot? Are we talking about the block way over by where Elliott lived, up at the north end of Blodgett? I think I sent you that example where there's like 8 homes on the block of Sheridan and Blodgett, right at that corner, just south of Crabtree, where there's 9 homes on the block now, and there's like 24 heritage lots plotted, if you want to call those heritage lots.
Right.
But that wasn't the first subdivision. So to give a recommendation to the plan, we have to have, I think we need to refine this recommendation a little bit.
Okay.
And I really have a problem with saying that because one owner on a street has gone to the trouble of consolidating his heritage lots. So now he's got one home where there used to be 3 heritage lots, but the current county records only should provide 1 pin. Right next door, the next door neighbor has not gone to the administrative trouble of getting rid of the consolidating under 1 pin. I mean, so therefore, are you saying that we should allow one neighbor to sell his home so the developer can come in and build on 3 lots and the guy next door can't? There's not enough definition here, especially just in terms of what you're considering. How old is the heritage lot?
This is in keeping with the conversation we had last time, and the text that's here is different than it was previously.
It is.
So the direction of the group was to talk about studying this. The word that was in before was a little more aggressive, right? It was reevaluate. Reevaluate kind of comes with a connotation that this is wrong, fix this, right? And so that's why we talked about looking at it in terms of studying this option. It wasn't about studying specific lots, didn't mean to do that. It meant to identify an opportunity to preserve this historic element of the community and the houses. It didn't pick an area because it wasn't looking to rezone or make a specific change. It was to study this question.
Yeah, and maybe part of it is even defining it. I mean, to your point, George, but I guess if the PCZBA cares about those smaller lots and those smaller cottages, in my mind, that would be something that you would want to study to ensure that they are here by the end of the comp plan period, right? So the idea that, and to your point, what do we mean by that? Well, I think you can help decide that yourselves. I don't know that we need to be that specific now, but if you don't think it's an issue, then we can take this out. But if you think it's something you want to protect over the next 20, 30 years, then say, we want to define this issue, look at it, and find out if we want to do something about it. I mean, I think that's all it needs to say.
Well, on a narrow enough definition, yes, I would recommend studying it.
Okay.
But literally, right now, it is literally so open-ended because it could, you know, and the first thing is to distinguish between a lot that has a house still on it, a smaller 20-foot wide house on a 25-foot wide lot, versus these.
So that's in your study, and that's in.
We should say, yeah, we've talked, I think there's been consensus before at certain boards. About drilling down on the zoning regs to make sure we can save, or provide a bigger incentive to save these homes.
George, can I just ask, so I think we said last month that, aren't there like 7 of those left?
7 or 8 homes.
Right, so that's.
Where there are homes on lots.
I wasn't thinking of creating new ones from.
But there are
existing-
hundreds of underlying.
Yeah, understood that.
Which is what concerns me, that it would.
Right.
And I don't even want to recommend that we consider exploding the density of the east side. It would totally change the character. If you're going to do that, then you might as well drop the tree section, because you're not going to save a single tree on the east side of the village. If you're going to say that a developer can come in and build 4 homes where there are currently 1. Or under Opticos's recommendation, you can have 6 homes where there are currently 1 in the R4. It's so wide open that it.
Well, I think you just narrowed it down really quickly. If the consensus is for existing homes on smaller heritage lots,
Right,
then that's the universe.
fine with that.
That's it.
I'm fine with.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
What else?
No, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm expressing my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. Ann's about ready to kick me, I'm sure, but.
I agree, I think.
I think you could, I try to do it for this one, but I was gonna say if there's any subdivision homes and multiple lots in whatever what's the minimum width for non-heritage lots?
And
50 feet.
I think that's too
50
specific.
feet and 7,500
I'll tell you
square
what, I understand the concern. We have greater clarity. We'll come back next month with better language. This wasn't it.
That's what, as far as I'm concerned.
Different language. Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Let's see here.
But, I mean, the consensus is to do something, study that more, yes?
And this is just the very first subdivision.
That's what I thought.
Or a preservation effort, right?
Right.
Yep, yep.
But I thought it was a very limited
Right.
number, like
Yeah.
7 or 8.
Perfect, yeah. Cool.
George, oh,
So do you want me to go through my
Oh, yeah, why don't you just go through?
8 items that I have, or, and then everybody else can? So,
There might be some parallel concerns as you work your way through.
page 41.
Might as well make a record, George, and we'll go from there.
Map?
And, oops. So and this was just the future land use map is what I was talking about, page 41. And I just wanted to pose the question because I know I personally wouldn't be opposed if we expanded the allowable mixed use area further south of where the storage building, the new storage building is going in. We've got the very large lot that's, yes, known as Lot 11, drew right below the storage building, that has this huge open space that's always going to remain an open space because it's a big, giant wetland. There must be, to me, I personally wouldn't mind throwing that in there. That building over many of these years has been, a lot of it has been vacant. And if ever there was a potential to possibly turn something into housing and to go to Member Danley and Member Fisher's point, if you show a developer that we will at least consider mixed use there, it's going to, it might drive someone to submit a proposal if Lot 11 goes vacant again. So anyway, that particular lot is particularly because of the huge wetland area, which would be a benefit to any mixed use or residential development there. I just thought it was worth maybe putting that in our future land use as part of that recommendation, expanding the mixed use area.
Contemporary industrial building.
But it has been empty.
It's not now.
Not now, but it has been on many occasions, and there's there's a wealth of asphalt that isn't used at all out there. So what is, I don't know, what does everybody else think? Should we throw that in there?
Yes.
Fine with that.
Yeah, no downside.
Okay. Page 56. The reference to the 125 space parking surplus. I have made a habit, and even today I went out there to look at 2:30, well past the lunch hour, and there were only 12 parking spaces in the whole circular portion of the lot, the portion of the lot that is currently striped. And it just seems to me that the thrust of this area is that the plan continues to suggest that we have this huge surplus of parking. And we refer, the study noted that it represents 125 space parking surplus. And I don't know what they did on the day when they conducted that study. Maybe it was still in the end of COVID, the last time it was done. But it just, that statement bothers me because we do not have that kind of surplus, especially when we're trying to promote the use of public transportation. We don't want to be coming up with recommendations to get rid of the available space at the north end of our train lot, close to where the train users want to park, close to where we want our CBD people to be able to park, to walk to the CBD. And I would like that, I don't know how to suggest it be softened, but I personally think that it should be softened so that it doesn't suggest that we have this mammoth surplus, which it just doesn't exist. I don't know how that number was arrived at.
Wasn't that added to reflect that? It would have to be an offset park. I thought if.
Well, there are some comments about offset, but there's also statements that says there's a 125 space surplus. And it just, anyway, it bothers, if I were king and writing the plan by myself, I wouldn't make that statement.
Okay, so we'll clean that up.
So George, you're saying that there were only 12 spaces available?
In the main
Right.
loop, when you drive through the stripe part,
Right.
then you get into that area.
Right.
But there's only 42 other spaces down there, and
Right.
6 of those were used today. So, there's
Okay,
It
I just
still
want to make
leaves
sure I got the empties.
75
from
other
that.
spaces that, it's like the whole lot.
Got it.
I mean,
Anyway.
it's the core CBD lot. No
So-
doubt.
Page 69, the 10-acre parcel. I'm personally concerned that the language is still a little bit too directive towards suggesting that the only way we develop that is if we connect to the residential neighborhood streets to the east. And there is some language, one sentence towards the end about checking with the neighbors, or maybe that's in the graphic on the next page. And I know from a traffic perspective, I'm not sure why Thornwood was chosen as opposed to Birkdale, but if you've ever driven Green Bay Road in rush hour in the evening, northbound traffic stacks up past Thornwood. So you wouldn't want to have 50 or 60 extra dwelling units feeding traffic trying to get out of Thornwood on the Green Bay when the traffic going northbound stacks up beyond where Thornwood intersects Green Bay. From a traffic perspective, you would want to, if you're going to use the street, you would want to use the southerly street or the southerly 2 streets. So I'm not sure why Thornwood was picked as opposed to Birkdale and West Prospect, but that's it. I think there just needs to be, personally, a little bit more language in there about evaluating the impact of connecting the, if we have a new development of those 10 acres, more consideration given to the neighborhood there.
I might,
And then,
go ahead, George.
and then, the Opticos drawing, we talk about comparable density, but when you count up the units, dwelling units in the Opticos drawing, you end up with the density dwelling unit per acre about 1.5 times what's to the east. And as we learned 3 months ago with our analysis of the second project that came in on Scranton Avenue, these little sketches can sometimes come back to bite you. And the language suggests densities comparable with the neighborhood, but yet the Opticos drawing doesn't equate to that. So that if we get a potential developer coming in, although it is our land, so hopefully we can dictate what goes there. But anyway, that's another concern I have there.
Yeah, if I may just follow up on that, Member Russell, I think considerable progress was made, at least from my perspective, with respect to some of the verbiage on that page, but I'm still troubled by the first 9 or 10 lines of that paragraph. But I think between Mr. Russell's comments.
That's exactly
and
where I have
Yeah.
most of my errors. The first couple sentences just seem to be too suggestive that this is what's going to happen. And then there's a little comment at the end about, well, we'll see what the neighbors think. If we can somehow soften that, would be my opinion.
I can,
Yeah, that's where the comment is. It's tucked into the picture and really. Anyway.
So that's what I was going to come up here and ask. Is that the consensus of the direction that first section of that paragraph or that main paragraph should build on that? Right? Is that the consensus of the group? Because we definitely hear that.
I think so.
Great.
And then the only other big point I had was and I think I've said this before in our discussion about missing middle, we talk about creating options and creating housing diversity, but in my mind, if you promote missing middle and you start allowing more than one unit to be built on a single-family lot, when these ranch homes go up for sale, which probably would sell now for $500,000 on the east side,
I think
smaller.
you're low.
Okay, maybe I am, but or in the other neighborhoods, you allow developers to come in and buy these properties and build 2, 3, or 4 unit developments on these properties, and they're new units. They're going to be more expensive, each individual one, because it's new construction, than some of these older ranch homes that exist. And what we're doing is we're satisfying the element of the population that says, gee, I wish my kids could afford to move into Lake Bluff, and I'm probably going to help them with their down payment, of a couple $100,000. We're helping the middle income and upper income families with middle housing. But what we're doing is we're decreasing the options for those in the bottom third of the income range or bottom fourth. That the overall trend will be to make it more difficult. That you'll decrease the number of options for the people in the community, and I just wish that there was some recognition of that, some statements of that in this, anytime we talk about missing middle, that we have to be aware of and be cautious of eliminating the lower priced options in the community. And I'm not talking about the definition of legally affordable. I'm talking about, it's same thing, I'm thinking about all these people that live in these small 1- and 2-story, 2-room apartments over here. When those things get redeveloped, those people aren't living in the community anymore. Because the new units are all going to be way, way beyond their price range. And so we're also eliminating or driving down the number of options for them. So, you can talk about housing diversity with missing middle, but I think you're putting much more burden on the lower income range. And I would just appreciate a couple statements inserted in the plan that recognizes that that's a possible or a probable outcome when we redevelop these smaller, older ranch homes, and we redevelop these very small, older rental multifamily units in our multifamily district. Just by inserting some sentences to at least acknowledge that that's a possibility. I lived and worked here through the land and building frenzy, Deb, in the late 90s, where the builders were anything that they could get their hands on, and especially if it was subdividable, they would buy the house, tear it down, build 2 new homes side by side. There's a ranch home that used to be on Witchwood, where they built 3 homes. And every one of those homes probably cost 4 times as much as the one smaller ranch home they took down. And that's just life, and that's the way it's going to be. And I would like the plan verbiage to at least acknowledge that that's the hazard we run when we push missing middle as replacement housing. I think it's different when we have a 10 acres that's not developed, when we have Stonebridge that's not developed, when we have 800 Green Bay Road or 1600, whatever the parcel is up north of the school, where most of it is 16 acres of mostly vacant land. There's a different equation there, but when we talk about replacement of existing housing, there's an impact, and the impact is on our lower income residents. And I'm not asking for a redraft, not suggesting a redraft of the whole second section, just once again, an acknowledgement that this might occur.
Are you suggesting that we make value statements, what we value as the zoning board? Because you're getting to a very philosophical question.
It's all based on our philosophical understanding of what we want the village to be, and I'm sure we all have different opinions.
No,
on that.
I completely
So
agree with you. Those are the outcomes, that's the way the economics work at this point, and I think so many of those conversations that we've had in strategic planning, the statements from our fellow village residents are that we value having smaller and less expensive places for single or older or younger people to live, right? We want them to be a part of the community. We recognize their value.
Just to be clear though, from my understanding of what's in this draft comp plan, the only area that you're really talking about, where this group has talked about, which potentially could result in what you're describing, is the R5 district.
No, there are some general references, especially, I thought the Opticos plan had gone away until 15 minutes ago when Clara suggested it was going to be an appendix to the plan. I don't see, is there a reference right now in this that says the Opticos document is because we had one presentation on that. It can't be an appendix without us going through it.
But
in
what you
detail.
guys have talked about, in my recollection, I could be wrong, is that you guys have talked about, I'm sorry, existing.
Do you want the existing? Sorry. Zoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
But right now, you guys have talked about that in greenfield, so like the Stonebridge side or that estate we talked about by the school. Those are the areas where you talk about maybe greenfield, you could see some missing middle, and in 2 existing zoning districts, the CBD and the R5. But there's no ranch homes. There are some, like you talk about those low scale multifamily, yes, for sure. But this is that area is, it's the postage stamp. But that's it. But yes, I would agree with you that
It's not as exact, it's not as exact as you're making it sound. There are references and there are inferences.
If there are specific,
There are inferences that the single-family districts, these inferences exist in this document.
the intent is not to say, and I agree with what you said about the idea that if somebody tore down a ranch home and put in, 2 homes on that lot, that, yeah, they're not going to put low-priced homes, they're going to be more than that ranch was. The idea of missing middle in that regard, I'm not suggesting this be an infill development, is that instead of the ranch home being replaced with one, I don't know, $2 million home, it's replaced with 3 that are $700,000, right? So that they're relatively cheaper. But it wasn't the intent of the plan to have that missing middle idea be for infill throughout the village. And if there's specific spots that you found that, we'll take them out, because that wasn't the intent. The idea was, just as Drew was saying, is that infill, greenfield sites, which are essentially infill, that's where it's appropriate. That's what the text on this, whatever it is, page 98 says. But if there's spots where you found where it talks about that situation where somebody would tear down a ranch and build 3, that's, I don't know that that's the intent that we heard from anybody and wasn't the intent to put it in there. So let us know where those are, we'll yank them out.
Okay, I'll go through looking for inferences.
Because we had that conversation already, right? Because the APICO said, well, draw.
I know you're sick of me, but.
No, I'm just telling you, we had that conversation, said, should it be like a 1,000-foot loop around, the CBD and all that to say that's where we should put it? And they, no, don't put it there. Okay.
Who's next?
The other comments I have, I'll just write them out more cleanly and get them to Claire in the next couple of days so she can forward them.
Cool. No, thank you very much, George. Who else?
I'll go. I just had a couple comments. One was the letter we got from Mickey Collins and parallel thinking in the business park, really the pages 52 to 54. And this is a time that I don't think we'd have a lot of neighbors complaining or worried about the height of a building. But we've always said in that area that we should think creatively. And I loved the idea that we shouldn't even note if it's 3 or 4 stories and perhaps even keep it open. And elevate that space in a way that Mickey Collins beautifully stated in her letter, really. And I reiterate in that I think talking about streetscapes, enhancing the connectability, walkability, and also don't limit the height of the buildings. I was in California recently, and there's a lot of work-live buildings being built. In fact, doing Pilates on the first level, and then they were living on the second level, and then they had a roof and a playground and the top. So it was just a lot more of that creative thinking of what we can do and how we live. And we also have that hospital nearby that is going to generate some interest, I would think. So for me, the business park, I would hope would be a little bit more encouraging creativity and flexibility. And then I think it would be helpful, just in general, when we're talking about, in order to recruit, let's say, there was that word used, or to encourage development in the way of, 611 Walnut, 800 Green Bay, the 10 acres, the multi-unit. How do we do that? And I think first, maybe it's me, I just need a visual of it just listed on if we really are going to encourage development in certain areas away from standard R4 or residential. That I'm not talking about what we were talking about earlier, but I just wanted to see a list because it's scattered throughout that we talk about the 10 acres. And I know some are multi-unit and others are R5 and R4, but how do we really understand it if part of there's an action plan in there about recruiting? Does that make sense? Developers.
Mm-hmm. I don't think the 611 Walnut or 33 East North properties are specifically called out, or the village owned along Sheridan Road, that piece. I mean,
Yeah.
Kind of focused on the larger
Yeah.
sub-areas. Yeah, to try and pick all of them is just, it's tough. If there are some that should be in here because they're specifically, should be highlighted, we can do that, but.
Can you go to the CBD, that future CBD? I know that there is kind of a concept shown on
The future land.
For the CBD.
Map or that CBD.
the CBD one
specific?
specifically, please, sorry.
I don't know what that is.
Because I've mentioned in prior meetings about the village pursuing an RFP for that 611 Walnut and 33 East North. I mean, I'm actively working on that, and it's getting close to going out.
Well, I went through the back part where it's saying things of high priority, medium, and low. And then I sort of took what would need a policy change, and there seems to be about 12 high priority items that would be directed either to change policy or for all of us to talk at a later date. But, they had even mentioned Stonebridge, established density and urban design expectations for future development, and it's just, I don't know, there's something about it might be interesting for the community instead of worrying that what we're going to develop or approve or put on the table is a negative, but how do we keep encouraging that what we have is, apart from that? And a lot of times density is a fearful notion, or not understanding the scale of a building seems to be, negative right now, even if it's setbacks. So maybe there's block plans that need to be done, or maybe listing things that could clearly define that it's not necessarily, what we can do and control could be different. Does that make sense?
Well, three things
Right.
from that. One, the village-owned properties are, I think, in a different bucket, right?
Yep.
Those are the ones we actually control. We can sell, we can do, we can control the fate of those, and the village has done that multiple times, and, sometimes it's just waiting for the right amalgamation of parcels to make something happen. And so I think the village has a history of doing that and is still doing that. The other bucket of that is the village making signals to the universe with its comprehensive land use plan and its the zoning code being in alignment that matches, the development community's vision for it, so that things can come in and happen. Those are like for the Stonebridge site, the village wouldn't market that property, right? We don't own it. Somebody's privately held. So that's in a separate bucket. And then the final piece of that is probably you're kind of almost like an education about the village tried to do what I think you're describing.
Massing.
We did a design preference study for the downtown. We started that process. We hired Tesca to do it. We went down that road and went through the ABR. It was going jointly through the PCZBA. And when it got to the end of both of those pipelines, the ABR came with, we don't want to do this. We want material standards. The PCZBA went through it, said, we don't want to do this. And they came up with the CBD planning principles. So we started down that path, and we ended up in a different place. And so we could try again, but that's what you're describing, is like kind of like, here's a design study, what we want to see.
And that's kind of what the plan speaks to, is exactly what you're describing. And we've seen other communities do this, and it's been part of other plans we've talked about. And I don't want to introduce new jargon, but at the risk of doing it, there's this notion of soft density, right? That if you're doing a 2-flat, or you're doing a 3-plex, or you're doing the 4-plex, that it's designed in such a way that it's got the peaks of the roofs and the location of the front doors and whatnot, that it's got the character and scale of a single-family home, albeit a large one, right? And that's what that notion of design guidelines is in there, that says if there's going to be this kind of new development, whether, again, not that it's intended to be infill, but if it's going to be around the downtown, there's an option to have that character. I think that's kind of the path that Drew was suggesting that you started going down, but the idea of considering that again is where that comes from.
I mean, and that could be another objective within this comp plan, is to do design guidelines for the CB, revisit that, or do it for the remaining block 2, or, go back and restudy that, and to help maybe solve some of this issue of how big 2.5, look at that.
I think it's a good idea. And I think it would help the community and the neighbors around there, that perhaps there are ways to make it look far more appealing if they would really understand the massing and how it relates to one another.
I agree. Visuals are incredibly helpful. It's beyond the imagination, especially when you're afraid.
So Jill made a couple recommendations at the beginning that, relative to Mickey's comments, I want to concur that I wouldn't have opposed if someone said the whole North Loop could be considered for mixed use. But I would be opposed, she's suggesting that we open up the whole industrial park to mixed use right away. And if suddenly a building would empty out in the South Loop, getting pedestrian connectivity up to the retail area would be a substantially different task. And I would rather take it in steps, personally. But I do agree with their comment about the height limitations, because they are pretty restrictive. And I know back when they were debated, the fire department had a real strong hand in the height limits. And I don't know where they stand now on that issue, but I recall that the fire department drove the height limits in the industrial park when we redid the zoning
When was that?
To-
Do you remember?
25 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think even a three-story height in the CBD too, having apparatus to be able to reach.
So,
That'd be
But-
part of the equation, yeah.
and then the other comment, and I didn't see this when I first got here, so I'm still reading Mickey's letter, but is there a possibility that Metro could actually
I know.
close the station and sell it, and we would end up with a platform? And if there's any possibility that that's a possibility, then we should have that in the plan, that we should monitor that station and the ownership. We're not going to be able to buy it outright right now, but at least some sort of statement that indicates where we want to keep that as an operating.
Yeah, and I think that's probably in the transportation section of the comp plan, but it just, the Union Pacific is the owner of the station. The Union Pacific entered into an agreement with a company, I believe, out of Utah, to buy several stations, to include ours, with a contingency list of like 1 million pages. And I think it's still in play, but they basically went around to communities where they had some invested, or I'll say right, to purchase the property and talk to those communities, including Lake Bluff, to say, what do you think about these plans? And they showed like massive, they're really a senior family home business. And they showed very strong, large buildings and said, hey, what about doing this right in your downtown? And it's like, not a shot. And we said, well, what about the 10 acres the village owns? So they kind of looked to do horse trading. And that's what they've been going around Chicagoland doing, trying to get horse trades. And I think they probably actually only bought maybe one, maybe two in the whole Chicagoland area. And they know they have to get zoning from the village. I mean, this is rare. So it's like they are completely in the need of the village to agree with whatever they want to do. So I don't think it's a real threat. The biggest threat is just the overall fiscal health of public transportation in the Chicagoland area, which isn't great, right? But we can certainly put something that is part of the core makeup of the downtown, and having the variety of transportation operations and options, and if that's not already there, but yeah.
And what's everybody think about the height restrictions out in the industrial park? Because right now they are 2 stories, 30 feet, something like that.
Well, I
Pretty
think some of
restrictive.
that depends on what the fire department says.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I mean, if that's,
Well, yeah, they could, but, we could still express an opinion. And then
I
if
mean,
they say it just doesn't work without
I don't think there's necessarily something that is a negative. It would depend on, there's a lot of factors, but, you put a 5-story hotel there, that's fine, if it's feasible.
The Forester is 4 stories, I think, out in.
4 stories, yeah.
Yeah.
In Conway, and the fire department can handle that, I think, so.
Well, they have a tower truck.
Different apparatus. But I think you guys would probably, this is different than maybe here, right? In close proximity to these other different scale buildings, maybe. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. You would view this a height restriction less so than you would here. You'd be more concerned about it here.
Yeah, I took the comment, and you all have talked with her more, I know, but I took the comment to relate to this new kind of residential development not needing to be beholden to the height limit, that it wasn't so much about the industrial buildings, for instance. So that maybe what we should talk about is the idea of new residential development being logical to be greater than 2 stories in this area as it's shown here. That's what I took from the comment. Did y'all hear something different?
Fine. That's fine.
No, that's
Okay.
what I took.
Okay, seems to read the other way, but to me. Mickey's comment about, I thought she was including the commercial buildings with the height restrictions and as opposed to just the new possible residential or mixed use out there.
I wouldn't be keen on having it apply to the industrial park, because then you're gonna start to get those huge, that's what you invite, is a larger building.
Clear storage.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why I didn't think that it was part of the existing industrial use or business use, that it was about this new residential area.
Yeah, I think we'd be concerned about the streetscape on Waukegan Road too, that we wouldn't want to all of a sudden start having 3 or 4-story buildings, sporadically through there, but when you look back at the yellow areas by the retention pond, 3 stories seems quite reasonable back there.
Okay, so we can focus on that.
The transportation section doesn't mention that I can see the railroad station and maintaining the metro station and the metro trains going to wherever. And maybe that should be included in the transportation section. Because it is a key part.
I mean, that's clearly the consensus of the group, so absolutely.
Yeah. Especially now that people have to go to work more than they did during COVID. It's busier. That's why there's less parking places there.
Do we know what Metro ridership is now?
Good question. The last time they released like station by station ridership was 2018,
Meh.
which is not helpful at all.
No.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
I know the ridership on this line is probably half of what it was pre-pandemic, but
Right.
it's increasing, and they're changing the service to make it less about just going in and out of the city in rush hour, but for other things. So they're doing the right things. But
There's more mandating people go to work rather than work at home, so, it's a moving target right now.
For sure.
Any other comments, Jill, from your perspective?
No,
Yep.
Very much talking about similar things to what Jill said about the business park and such, and some of the things that have already been covered. But I guess I have one question, and it was, you mentioned that this kind of document was often used to obtain funding, grant funding. Is there anything in here that we're missing that would kind of set us up a little bit better for grant funding on any level, or?
Yeah, and they're not used, they're not written and then used with a specific grant in mind.
I know, but is there anything in here that opens us a little better?
No, the reason that plans get included in grant applications is frankly that it shows the grantor that the applicant has got their act together, because they've been through the process of doing all this, and that there's a holistic connection to the money that they may give to be part of this. So,
Right.
yeah, we generally, I've seen plans where they list the sources of grants, but those change,
Right.
especially lately.
Right.
So it's just about having a coherent document. It really, there's nothing I would change to be specific about a grant.
Okay, and then to the point about listing either buildings or small lots or whatever that would be available, I guess I'd wonder about dating us. Again, if this is a long-term plan, is something like that going to be used up in 5 years or something like that? That's just a thought there. And then, George, to your point about talking about how doing some of these things will lessen the ability for the 1/3 of the population maybe to stay here or something, maybe that kind of statement can go in community vision in that section, just, a sentence or something, or I don't know how you're seeing it, but if that's kind of our vision that we want to encourage people to be able to stay here, maybe that's a place for it. I didn't go back and look at that to see where it would go in based on when you said it, but, or the community character, whatever, in that. And, no, I think that's pretty much, I think everything else has kind of been touched on.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it. Elliot?
I have nothing else to add from what I've already said.
Okay. Ann?
I think we're covering Most everything. I have one question dangling here. Page 149 in the prioritization range. I just happened to note under housing that there's a section that was in the first copy that we went through referring to developing an ADU handbook. That is missing now. But I'm sorry, that was page 149, but on page 99, we talk about identifying and evaluating regulatory barriers to ADU construction, which isn't a handbook. So,
That's here. Identify and evaluate regulatory barriers to ADU construction.
oh, did that get replaced? Maybe that was just replaced. Oh, there was, right, that was, okay.
Yes. But there's still some mention of it. It's just not exactly a formal recommendation, but still.
It was part of the discussion of us not wanting to go so far in encouraging the ADUs, and the idea of having a handbook for how to do it, based on last time's discussion, was seen as sort of encouraging it, so that's how
Okay.
it fell out.
Okay, I wondered, okay.
And you know what? Moving back.
Right.
Consider design guidelines for multi-unit development in districts that allow for such development, like the R5 district and Western Commercial. We can just add and the CBD.
Yeah, that was,
Okay.
Yeah, and can I just say regarding that ADU piece, George, almost to continue your thoughts, sometimes I'm hearing about ADUs because people want to be able to have someone live with them that's not necessarily family, but can allow them to stay in their home, you know, and that in a separate apartment, and that's the caregiver essentially and stuff. Our rules don't allow for that right now, but that might be one way where we can help keep some of those little ranches around if an ADU could be attached to it or something, and it doesn't have to become, you know, two houses or whatever. So anyway, just a thought.
No, that's a good, I agree, that's a good thought. On the other hand, looping back even further to my comments about the
Heritage lots.
heritage lot, the lots that your comment, the third from the bottom, retain, that's an inference. Retain open to diverse housing types at strategic locations throughout the village. That's an inference to missing middle housing at locations throughout the village. That's the kind of
and again,
comment.
these are the summary statements that are the recommendations that have got the paragraphs under them that talk, and.
So
this
that
one
links
talks-
back to a statement somewhere. I'm just making a point that there are.
Point taken.
Chair.
Yeah, just a couple of comments,
Please.
Michael and Andrew, and thank you again for reviewing at least some of my proposed revisions and incorporating some of those and obviously declining some others. But when I look at pages 36, 39, and 40, and that's, land use and sub-areas map, I'm still troubled by the size of the parcel attributed to Turlotta Wines in Armor Woods. I just don't think that the blue reflects the relatively small size of that parcel. In other words, if I'm a developer 10 years from now, and I see that big,
You think there's a bigger thing there, right?
well, I think it's a smaller, it should be smaller.
Yeah, but it gives you impression that it's a bigger piece. Is
Yes,
that-
yes. I think it misrepresents the actual acreage versus the entire acreage.
Gotcha. I think that's probably just something with the CMAP data, but there is definitely a lot of built-in open space there. We can try and, cut that up to add some green where there is green there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it might send the wrong message to somebody a decade or 20 years from now.
It does look bigger than that.
Big design.
Is any of that open space or conservation space?
That's a good question.
There's a lot of open area in front of the building, but it's part of the lot. That's how it gets to be this big.
That's
And that-
why
I think that's the point.
I
That's the
wonder,
point you're
yeah.
making. Maybe we show it as a green area in front of the building.
Well, yeah, especially if there is conservation space, then that's a different hurdle for folks.
So maybe we make the blue more focused around the actual building, and the rest of it, which is that kind of big yard in front of it, we may just make it green. Okay,
Yeah, because the front's all green,
yeah.
yeah.
But shouldn't you decide if it's actually owned by the
Right.
Right.
the estate and see who owns it? Because then
Yeah.
it could be, it can be used if it's owned by the Trelato versus Conservancy.
Has the Trelato family commented? Are they aware? Or has Tingley Oaks commented, or do we know?
We've not heard from them, we've not reached out to them, but we've essentially left what they have, which
Right.
is, again, I think a discussion we had a couple of meetings ago.
Let's see what else they have. Pages 59 and 60, that goes back to Block 3. I think we might still have to do a little more work, especially with the PNC property, being under development now. It might have to be a little bit fine-tuned, because at some point, there's an inference that both parcels are still in place, so to speak, and
So be more
certainly,
clear in acknowledging that they're underdeveloped, or they're going through the process, or,
yeah, at least,
property should be back in front of you next month.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah, because I mean, it's a critical parcel in the scheme of Lake Bluff. And then going to page 80, and this is dealing with wetlands and potentially restorable wetlands. Is the source of that data some county, state, or federal
It is,
map?
yeah, it is the Lake County Wetlands Restoration and Preservation Plan, RAP. These are just parcels that they identified, or, places where there once were wetlands that they've identified, so we just generally included the map.
Because I guess one of my concerns is, does it create an inference, say, with respect to restoring to wetlands, that all of a sudden the golf course is in play?
No, absolutely, we can add some additional text to that map saying that, this does not show the village's intent to restore any specific land, but it's just a consideration.
Yeah,
Yeah, we tried to remain neutral, especially.
Can we make it small? Is it the citation there, is that?
well, I was a little bit concerned by the citation on the right side, Drew, but I was more concerned about the parcel being identified. It
It does
looks
say that.
relatively huge.
Yeah, there is, the note on there does say, does speak to that.
Areas with compatible soil that may be restored to wetlands is not an indication of the village's intention to develop wetlands on those properties.
Yes.
Want that
something
in
like that.
bigger print.
it's there.
Make it bigger?
Oh, I see. Well, yeah, good. I couldn't hardly read that.
See how intuitive these guys are?
Yeah.
So,
by bigger
what
print it
this-
is.
It's right.
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah.
At
So
least the
what
size
this
of the
is-
legend.
saying is that these soils, though, exist. So when we get a lot of rain, those soils are like, whoa, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it's Lake County.
And then, I think we talked
can
about,
cite this data too, because it's from 2021, because it's kind of like it changes over time when the definitions change, so we should probably document when this was captured.
Yeah, I think that site's important. Good,
I'm just a little bit worried about unintended consequences
well said.
10, 20, 30 years from now. We talked a little bit in the past about pedestrian bridges, and I'm not sure in the draft if we talked about, or maybe they were stricken.
I would say there used to be a reference in the old comp plan about coming out of the East Terrace over the railroad. That was talked about for a long time. And nobody wants to see how that ADA ramp, how big that is and where it starts to get over that. And I think the direction was to do something, a crossing around Blodgett, also known as the George Russell Not Yet Memorial Crossing at grade. No, this is, it's like the one that's in downtown Western Springs. There's a couple of subterranean crossings that we make for pedestrians to go there.
Yeah.
Andrew likes those, by the way.
Yeah, we've, so we have two major references to underpasses, one by Blair Park, one on Blodgett. We've also added some text that potential places for further study can include perhaps an underpass in the East Terrace's neighborhood to Sheridan, and one near Lake Bluff Elementary School. But those are kind of longer-term things that are just mentioned in the text.
And I think we talked about at least a little bit about a potential overpass between like Bath and Tennis going over the UP tracks toward Sheridan Road.
We added a comment about studying that in the future as well.
Okay.
As another very separated crossing project.
And then, just two other comments. 117, there's a reference to construction of curb extension and potential traffic circle at intersection of West Washington, West Blodgett near Green Bay. Is that right by the elementary school?
Yes, that's the intersection of the two local streets. We tried to include some character images to not show it as kind of a very large scale roundabout. This is a Seattle traffic roundabout. These are also in some other suburbs in the area, but this one was available from a government source. So yeah, those are just kind of small treatments to make that intersection less paved, and encourage cars to slow down a little bit.
Oh, I see.
It's not the kind of roundabout that Lake County would put in at a major intersection. It's more of a traffic calming tool.
I took this comment in the plan to be that triangular intersection of, I mean, if you put a little roundabout in it, you're going to increase the pavement. I was wondering how that even, are there traffic issues at that? And where did that,
On school days.
how did that get,
When schools.
Oh, yeah.
are people parking or just trying to shoot across there?
Yes.
It's
Because we're
hazardous.
not changing the Green Bay this doesn't change the Green Bay intersection, does it? Well,
It's a tough intersection for different reasons, and maybe this is too specific of a solution.
Yeah.
But the idea that it is a difficult area to manage on school crossing, mornings and afternoons with all those modes of transit together, it's difficult.
And I guess last comment, page 125, and again, it gets back to block 3. There's a third bullet point, block 3, former PNC bank site until redevelopment occurs. We might have to just revisit that. But no, thank you very much, and thanks for all the hard work and all your engagement tonight again. And it's tremendous.
Thank you all. You're doing the hard work.
What about the sidewalks should block 3 get redeveloped?
There you go.
are you mad that's in there?
No, it's done, it's done.
I saw it's done.
Plans.
I saw it, believe me, I went to the village board minutes to see if it got in there.
Any further discussion among the commissioners or from Mr. Blue or Andrew or Drew tonight?
Thank you very much.
And then do we need a motion to continue?
Where's that now?
I so move.
Wait, there's the whole thing. Yeah, that's cool.
To a date certain of the next PCZBA meeting, which would be April 16th.
Any further discussion? Could we have a vote, please, Clara?
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Member Sorensen?
Aye.
Chair Peters?
Aye.
And Member Danley?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Oh, agenda item number 6, staff report.
Yeah, so the only item that I have really is that next month is shaping up to have multiple public hearings. At least 2 with our 2 continued public hearings, and then potentially 2 to 3 more. So just, that's coming, and they all are time sensitive per the applicant.
We won't be
so.
able to do this during that episode, during that.
Yes, we will.
No, we won't.
Yes,
Not
we're
it.
going to do it all.
Can we
Aaron's gonna stay here
start
for that?
earlier? Is that ever a
That,
possibility?
yeah, that is a possibility, so that's something that we can explore. starting earlier if schedules allow, so.
6:30.
6 o'clock?
6
Reasonable?
o'clock would be great.
If there's that many issues, we should plan on it for sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'd rather
5,
start.
6.
Well, we don't want to be too aggressive, Jim.
Yeah, okay.
But 6 is certainly reasonable if it all works for
People back from, home from work and.
Yeah, excellent recommendation. Agenda item number 7, Commissioners Report. Great. Agenda item 8, adjournment. Is there a motion?
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No, thank you very much. Very productive. Not easy.
And look at that. It's still 10:45.
Sorry.
We did